the girls of hip hop, Missy Elliott.
So
Little
I
Kim, I don't
too
know.
am the beneficiary of affirmative action, but it does not mean that I was not. Oh, here you go again. I thought we left that potato salad back in the last
For
episode.
Memorial.
What you say? What you talking about, Willis?
Okay.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we are one of the top 6 WGBH podcasts on the web. This is season 8, episode 7, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Well, before we jump into our conversation on the complications of social norms on this top 6 WGBH podcast on the web, we thank our new sponsors of the podcast. This episode, we have welcomed in Africana Studies at Berkeley and the Black Christian Experience Resource Center as our new sponsors, and we are so grateful. We especially thank each of you, our listeners and viewers, from special invitations to attend events, to speaking engagements, and to a special live episode. You have been amazing, and we are grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. Thank you for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, your comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing the podcast with others.
And I would be remiss if I didn't come with my tsunami of thanks to our loyal listeners and a hearty welcome to our new ones. Thank you for being our motivator and reason for bringing out the best in us, or maybe the best in me. And lastly, but certainly not least in my tsunami of thanks, is a shout out to the creative geniuses of our producers, Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls. We couldn't be what we be without them. Ain't that right, Emmett?
That's right. I know that's right. I know that's right. Now, Irene, we've just come through Holy Week, Passion Week, Passover, Resurrection Day, Easter. What did you do special this year that you haven't done in a while?
Okay, what I did, and normally, particularly after preaching my last sermon, because it's always the sunrise sermon, the classic 11 o'clock sermon and service, and then there's the 6 o'clock. And you know what I did the following day?
What's that?
Okay, a massage.
Come on with your bad self.
That's right. And you know why? Because I have hit a significant milestone in aging.
I know
And
that's
my
right.
theme is this: reclaiming my time. One of the ways to reclaim my time is to pamper self-care.
All right now. All right now. Well, let's jump into this episode. Here we go.
Learn how to fight.
Well, you gonna learn how to fight. Get up. Quit being so difficult.
But I'm working on my magic trick.
Give me that doggone magic trick. What you gonna do when somebody start picking on you? You gonna disappear?
From infancy and early childhood, human beings learn how to function in the world, in their nation, in their region, in their local community, in their neighborhood, in their home, and within their families through unwritten, informal rules of acceptable behavior that we often refer to as social norms. These basic and not so basic guidelines are often shown and demonstrated, and then the expectation is that the child will mimic the parent or the adult, and the role and the responsibility of remembering how to be. In Black communities, there is often a punitive response or some form of embarrassment associated with being out of the pocket or misbehaving or breaking the rules. Social norms are helpful in acculturating folks into a way of life that is practiced by family and community elders, and many are hurtful, as they can pass on socialized bad behavior, bad practices, fears, ancestral anger, and the various phobias. Irene, what do you think?
Oh, I say amen to that. I mean, these social norms, as I was growing up, was an unwelcome handcuff. You know, they certainly change over time and they're shaped by culture, but these social constructions, they last as long as a bad, what I would call a bad hairdo. So let me give you some social norms that I grew up with here. The whole thing is social norms are about social order. So you got married before you had a baby, and unwed mothers were considered social pariahs. But I'll give you a fashion norm that no one today would even think about it. And one was you don't wear white after Labor Day because you were supposed to go into your fall colors. And then there was something that as a child, you didn't wear the color black. And especially you wouldn't put black on a small child, even if that child was going to a funeral. And here's one that's changed, but I've noticed you haven't gotten with it, Emmett. Men couldn't wear pink. And they certainly, wait, and they certainly couldn't wear earrings, couldn't pierce their ears. But now we're in a society that is gender fluid, no longer this sort of strict gender binary. And we have a lot of social movements to thank for: the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, the LGBT movement. But and I think were it not for these movements, we wouldn't have Lizzo. Lizzo has really debunked this whole notion of body, shaming. I grew up at a time when you had to wear a girdle. Could you imagine that, Emmett? Could you imagine being in one? You know, I mean, so it's all these sort of things. Like men were supposed to be the only breadwinner. It was at one point it was okay to make fun of gay people, especially gay men. Another social norm. Some of these norms were laws, like the races should be separated. Separate but equal was fine. And the whole idea that if a woman went to college, it was simply to get a Mrs. After her degree, not to get the degree, but get a Mrs. That was more important to get married. But you got colleges like one that I went to, Wellesley College. So that's the thing about social norms. You hope that movements will stretch the boundary, debunk the inequality and the limitedness that they provide. African American culture have not, Emmett, moved that much on some of those social norms here. One is if an elder is speaking, the whole idea that, listen, some of them still exist, that children ought to be quiet, not seen, but quiet. But some of it, let me say this. Some of it I will hold on to. I like the stuff about respect your elders, particularly now that I am one. Okay. Okay. Before that, I used to say, "Oh man, that's old school." But right now, I'm with it. Okay, so if you don't call me Reverend Irene or Reverend Irene Monroe, you don't call me Irene. You call me Miss Irene. You don't call people out of their names here. I sort of like that one.
I mean, you have raised a number of things. I mean, I remember, the kids' table. Thanksgiving, there was always a little fold up church table with some fold up chairs that the kids had to sit at, or the thought about, no kids in the living room. Remember when we used to have plastic on the furniture in the living room, right? And the kids were not allowed to go in there because people paid all of their money in order to get their furniture out of layaway.
Yeah.
Look, remember that?
Oh yeah, but see, the problem with that is on a hot day, the
You get
plastic
stuck.
is stick to your body. Okay.
Or remember again, and it is a social norm of upward mobility, even if it was just in perception, of having the piano in the home that nobody played.
Okay.
Right, it was just to have access to a piano. It was a social or remember the TV / stereo, which was in a cabinet, which was a long piece of furniture along a whole wall.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the piano certainly for those who had a home. See, so now I know you had a home. Thank goodness you're not playing chopsticks anymore. But the point is, y'all had a home. But if you didn't have a home and you lived in the projects like I did, a sense of social mobility was a Cadillac that they called they call it a deuce and a quarter.
A deuce and a quarter. That's right. Now, what about, because we're talking about economics here, what about the money in the coffee can in the cabinet?
Oh my God.
The money under the mattress.
Yeah, well, see that now I'm from that generation. Here, you always put it under the mattress, because it was the whole idea that if you lived in the projects, they did house inspections, and one thing that they never did was look under the mattress. So that's where our few dollars went here and stuff.
Now, what about this one? Because again, a social norm, most women wore a purse and they never let go of the purse. And as a cisgendered man, you were never supposed to carry a woman's purse, right? Now we've changed that a little bit. But what about a
Well,
woman wearing
we got man purses
well,
now.
that's what I'm saying. We've changed it a little bit. But
Okay.
what about now women who wore a purse, but their money was in their bra?
Wait a minute now. That still goes on now.
That's what I'm saying.
But listen, that's a survival technique in this way.
Yeah,
Because someone can steal your purse. They're not going to steal your chest.
I know that's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
I
So
know that's
well,
right.
that had practical reasons for that. But I one that always used to get me here and stuff was the whole idea. But you and I don't know if this is cultural or everyone does this, but you could not go to the doctor, okay, without having on clean underwear.
Clean. That's right.
And not
That's
that
right.
anyone does it, but it was whole idea like you got your best. Wait a
Yeah.
minute, your best, your,
Yeah.
your best underwears.
Well, I mean, not only that, going to the doctor, but whether you were traveling by plane, train, or automobile, you always had to have on clean underwear and you had to have your best clothes on. And
Yeah,
I never understood that. I
yeah,
never
yeah, yeah,
understood
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Or better yet, there was another one here. If you went out to really, if you listen here now, this one changed. I kind of like this one here, or maybe I've been around white culture too much, okay, because that's much more lax. If you go to the theater, black folks, we get
We talk to the screen.
okay, yeah, but we get dressed up.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's a thing.
It's the dress up thing, okay? Because it's respect for who we are as a people because we're outside of our normal environment. We're going to
Mhm.
someplace special, but it also respect for the the performers.
Yeah.
So like I'm going to see Alvin Ailey,
Hmm.
and you would never wear jeans and just a blouse.
You
So,
better not.
okay, and I won't. I
You
won't.
better not.
Okay, I mean, listen, I'm gonna even take a bath. How about
Look-
that?
now see, we may have to go to break now because you moving into that space, and I know the bath is just code for what's about to come next,
That's
and
okay.
I'm not sure our viewers and listeners are ready
All
for
right.
that level of Reverend Irene Monroe on this here day. So I'm going to say we're going to break. We're gonna get you tightened up a little bit. We're gonna get you
Okay, cleaned up. How about cleaned up?
fixed up. We're gonna get you
Real
fixed
cleaned
up
up.
a little bit, and we'll be right back. This is your All Rev'd Up podcast. We'll be right back.
Come on, Uncle Joe. How you doing, baby? Listen, I'm a little thirsty. Reach down in that barrel and get me a drink. But look, I need it cold, because...
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we are back. At the top of our show, we played a scene from the Bernie Mac show, where Bernie Mac was teaching his nephew Jordan how to fight. That originally aired on November 21st, 2001. And the scene that we just played was from Tyler Perry's Medea's Family Reunion from 2006, where nasty Uncle Joe
Thank you.
had one of the young nieces bend over so that he can see her derriere and actually have unpleasant and unethical, immoral thoughts as he was watching this young family member bend over. Irene, we have talked about social norms and we have kind of made fun of some of the ones that we remember and reflect on, but there are some not so fun ones and
That's
some
right.
very harmful and hurtful ones, as we've just seen in this opening scene. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Uncle Joe is the creepy uncle we all have in our families here.
Yeah.
And and in that scene is the objectification of this young woman and a family member. So I mean it plays on a lot of issues here, but thank goodness for again when we talk about the expansion of human rights and civil rights here, thank God for children's rights, women's rights, body autonomy, and we now can say the P word, pedophile, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always, the pedophile in the family here. So that's one that you definitely, we can discard here. But there are a few others. Mental illness, that was
Yeah.
something that was always never talked about. And there was a stigma and shame about it. So you suffer in silence.
Yeah.
So we talk more freely about that. I'll tell you one that also becomes part of a culture. We we're not of, I'm not of that culture. But at one point, as a rite of passage, was genital mutilation.
Mm.
And again, we've and you never want to denigrate a person or a particular culture, but people now understand more evolved about women's rights and autonomy. Many more cultures don't do that. I'll tell you another one that was very helpful, was really part of the women's movement. So that you no longer, you would always know whether a woman was married or not, because it would be Miss Irene or Mrs. Irene, right? So the whole idea of Ms., really took away the stigma that, and what I call compulsory heterosexuality, that you had to be married. Who were you? Were you not married? And God forbid if you married a woman like I did. I mean, that was just even unheard of. So
Mhm.
again, you have these movements that help propel us forward to discard some of those social norms that are hurtful. And I mean hurtful to the point that it stifles not only social progress, but also just, emotional freedom.
I mean, let's stay right here because all of us had not only that creepy uncle, but we had to pay homage to all of the elders when we enter a family situation. So I remember having to go and hug and kiss all of the women and shake the hands of all of the men. And we always knew who that weird uncle was or that creepy uncle was. And we tried to stay away and we would get punished for not addressing that person appropriately. And you've talked about the notion of mental
Family.
wellness.
I just want
Yeah.
to wait, and see the complicity is with the family.
Yeah.
See, everybody knows that Uncle Joe, is creepy. Something ain't right. Even may know that he is a pedophile,
That's
and then
correct.
to have him around children was problematic, but yet as if it would go away, and it never did. And every child is victim of it.
Is victim of, and traumatized by it, the same way that for young people who were taught to never let them see you sweat or never let them don't get bullied and don't let them take your lunch money. And the whole Bernie Mac piece that we played earlier was Jordan wanted to focus on his magic trick rather than learning how to fight and be hyper masculine, right? So some of
Right.
those social norms have to do with hyper masculinity or the notion of homophobia or transphobia, which are
Right.
passed through the ways that young people are acculturated in their familial
And
system.
also how we call them. See, the whole wonderful thing that, I know that there's a lot of pushback, but the wonderful thing in asking people, what pronouns do you use?
Yeah.
Because I could be Irene, but use he and they,
Hmm.
or don't use any. And
Hmm.
so again, the whole concept of gender fluidity allows for a much more freeing way of defining yourself during various stages of your life. And that's beautiful, because a lot of folks who are they and them had to decide on whether it was she or he.
Well, I mean, this is interesting, Irene, and I want to kind of problematize this in the most hopeful, hopefully a non-threatening way. And I'm going to use humor here because back in the 1970s, brothers wore high heel shoes and brothers wore blouses and brothers wore bell-bottom jeans, and it was no questioning of somebody's
And Prince,
sexuality.
right, and Prince
I mean,
always wore heel.
yeah, I mean, so it's interesting how the evolution of what is not necessarily appropriate, but what is cool or what is in fashion,
Right.
a lot of men have painted fingernails now,
Mhm.
and you mentioned earlier about the earrings and
Right.
tattoos and all of those
But
things, and they
right,
were
but
often
Little Richard is, see, there's one way you look at Little Richard, the well-known, artist here.
Mhm.
You see, he was considered gay,
Yeah,
and and so this is in the 50s and 60s where it just wasn't appropriate. But he was wearing fingernail polish,
yeah,
lipstick, mascara. He couldn't wear it. But then comes 20 years later, we're in the 80s, 20 years later, and we got Prince. We
yeah,
got, okay, and there's nothing, wait, quote, nothing gay about that boy.
yeah.
Okay, nothing gay about that boy. And so that there again, you have these, restrictions that in many way misidentify people
Yeah.
and limit freedom of expression here. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing that's not going to change. Black folks in line dancing, that's not going to change. Black folks in cookouts, that ain't going to change. Black folks, and let me do this because you can tell which generation black folks are in based on what I'm about to say. Black folks are not going to stop talking trash when they playing bidwiz,
Okay.
spades, bones, or
That's right.
Uno.
There you go. There you go. And that is generational.
Generational right there.
Right. I'm the bid with generation. That's
See,
right. That's
I'm a
right.
spade. I'm a spades generation and bones. But
Yeah, yeah.
that Uno generation and Go Fish. I've watched young kids playing Go Fish, talking all kind of madness. I'm like,
Right,
oh,
right,
go
right.
on with your bad self.
Well,
It's something else.
let me tell you what I did when I got up here and I would play bid whisk, okay? And I'm coming from Brooklyn, right? So I would say to folks when I had a winning hand that I come all this distance from Brooklyn to do a Boston on you, because to do a Boston in bid whisk is to win.
Win.
And they called me the trash talking minister. I said,
Well, you gotta love that. I mean, so there's the pros and cons, and this is why we said the complications of social norms, right? I mean,
yeah.
there's the good and the bad, the happy and the sad.
The baby with the bathwater.
That's it. That's
So
it.
this is the thing, but sometimes you throw away both.
Yeah.
Uncle Joe, the creepy uncle, that's
go.
the baby with his bathwater.
Gotta go.
He's got to go here.
No question about that. Gotta go. Well, we gotta go too. Our time is up. So let me offer this final benediction. There's an old gospel song written by Anthony Tidwell and sung by Reverend Clay Evans in his mass choir. And it says this: as I look back over my life and I think things over, I can truly say that I've been blessed. I've got a testimony. Relative to the challenges of social norms, I've got a testimony that not only shares of historical moments of my life, a testimony of so many good moments, family gatherings, cookouts, relationships with loved ones, phenomenal friendships, exciting adventures, and the like. I have so much to reflect on that is, without a shadow of a doubt, a reflection that I've been blessed. I have also had the opportunity over the course of my life to practice the power of self-reflection, self-affirmation, and self-love. And over these years of my life, I have personally done a lot of hard work to recenter, rebalance, and realign my thinking to new social norms that actually are in conflict with the previous social norms that I was taught. I have done the work to check and aspire to no longer practice patriarchy or participate in misogyny. I've chosen love over hate. I have chosen to embrace rather than to condescend or to discriminate against others. And as a final word, I offer you the invitation to join me in this posture and to continue to do the work to be well and to be whole. And while you do that, let's protect and defend the dignity, the wholeness, and the wellness of one another too. Amen.
Amen.
And Ashe.
Ashe, my brother. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls. Sponsors include Africana Studies at Berkeley and the Black Christian Experience Resource Center.
Music for this episode is from Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Elizabeth O'Brien Gardner, Devin Robbins, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Pod and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, a comment, or an invitation at allrevveduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of All